A very good evening to you. Glad you could join us on Citizen Weekend. EAC Take Two, that is the African Community Take Two, initially established in 1967. It scattered in 1977, but this week it marked 25 years after being re-established. Together with my panelists tonight, including the Secretary General of the East African Community, Veronica Nduva, who will be joining us remotely from Mombasa, where the Interparliamentary Games have gotten underway, and together with the inaugural SG Ambassador Dr. Francis Muthaura, we look at the opportunities and the challenges that could face the community in the years ahead. But again, as is the custom, we take a look first at the highlights. Hashtag appoint IEBC now. Kenyans demand reconstitution of IEBC a day after Supreme Court Judge Lenaola raised the red flag.
Others were playing, and all of a sudden they slept. So they were giving the company the disabled one. That is the reason these old children was inside looking for the disabled one.
Family tragedy. 3 miners die as their home is consumed by fire in Kapsogut, Kericho County.
Tupewe sehemu yetu kwa ukamilifu ili we should give them the respect ya wale waliotutangulia.
Community in uproar over encroachment on cemetery land. Change after 9 years. Hussein Mohammed elected FKF president, beating outgoing Vice President Doris Petra. Our sign language interpreter tonight is Yula Nzale. Hussein Mohammed is the new Football Kenya Federation president. Hussein was elected in the second round of voting after round 1 failed to give an outright winner. The Muranga Seal vice chairman bagged 67 votes in the penultimate stage of voting held at the Kasarani Gymnasium. Competitors Barry Otieno and Doris Petra, who had already withdrawn from the race after the first round, still got a vote apiece as some delegates abstained. Hussein had claimed a slight advantage in round 1, garnering 42 votes, followed by Petra with 31, while immediate former FKF CEO Barry got 10. Kakamega Homeboys chairman Cleophas Shimanyula managed 4 votes, Sami Kempes Owino 2, Tom Alila 1, while Sam Ochola and Chris Amimo had none. Hussein's win ushers in a new dispensation after Nick Mwendwa's 9-year stint at the helm, having taken over from former President Sam Nyamweya in February of 2016.
8905.
Hours after the unusual demand by Supreme Court Judge Isaac Lenaola to have the IEBC reconstituted with urgency, Kenyans took to social media in support, crafting a hashtag appoint IEBC now, and that is on the X social media platform. The push by Kenyans quickly pushing the hashtag to the top of the trending topics on the X platform for the entire day. As Emmanuel To reports, Kenyans may have to wait until January next year to have the process of reconstituting the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission begin, with 2 matters at the Court of Appeal and the High Court blocking the nomination of the 9 members of the selection panel by President William Ruto.
Why don't we, for example, have a hashtag appoint IEBC now?
Taking cue from the hard-hitting statement and the rallying call by Supreme Court Judge Justice Isaac Lenaola to have Kenyans push for the reconstitution of the electoral body, the hashtag reconstitute IEBC now has been the top trending topic in the country as Kenyans stand up in their numbers to push the message across with the creative bold placards and posts calling for the government to fast-track the process of hiring the commissioners. And even though the public mood is to have the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission reconstituted now, Kenyans may not get their wish or demands until 2 matters pending in the corridors of justice are dispensed with. A petition by Boniface Njogu filed at the Kiambu High Court in October, challenging the appointment of the nominees to the IEBC selection panel for lack of representation of persons living with disability, is the first spanner in the works. The petitioner has cited Article 10 and Article 54(2) of the Constitution as the basis for his case. Article 54(2) states that the state shall ensure the progressive implementation of the principle that at least 5% of the members of the public in elective and appointive bodies are persons with disability. He argues the composition of the panel does not have a representation of a person with disability. The matter is set to come up for judgment on the 25th of January next year, after the petitioner sought orders to stop the Attorney General and the Clerk of the Senate, Jeremiah Nyegenye, who is the Secretary to the Parliamentary Service Commission, from forwarding the names of the IEBC selection panel to President William Ruto for appointment. Kiambu High Court Judge Dora Chepkony had given conservatory orders stopping the appointment of the panel until the matter is heard and determined. Similarly, while all the groups have given names of their representatives to the 9-member panel, the battle in and out of court between Ambassador Koki Muli and Augustus Chalo Muli from the Azimio side on whom between the two should represent the minority party continues. Chalo, who felt shortchanged by the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition for forwarding the name of Koki Muli to Parliament for the political party's liaison committee nominee slot, has asked the Court of Appeal to have his name instead presented. Koki Muli has stood her ground. Azimio maintains Koki Muli is the right candidate after meeting the requisite requirements, and since the other nominees in the political party's liaison committee are of the male gender.
Why is the IEBC not being constituted? Because Azimio can't appoint their representative to the panel. Is that something to hold a country hostage for 2 years?
All the parties involved in the formation of the IEBC selection panel have understandably finalized their lists and have forwarded them to Parliament for consideration, compilation and onwards transmission to President William Ruto, whose hands seem tied. The political party's liaison committee, which was to forward 3 names to the panel according to the IEBC Amendment Act of 2024, has nominated Nicodemus Bore to represent the Kenya Kwanza coalition as the majority party, while the opposition Azimio deals with the dispute between Ambassador Koki Muli and Augustus Chalo Muli. Evans Misati is standing in for non-parliamentary parties. The Interreligious Council decided to stick with its previous nominees in the names of Dr. Nelson Makanda and Fatuma Saman after the first panel was disbanded following nationwide demos. The Institute of Certified Public Accountants nominated Andrew Kipkoech to represent accountants. The Law Society of Kenya, which was also given 1 slot, gave the name of Caroline Kituku. The Parliamentary Service Commission settled on Linda Koome for the UDA party and Professor Adam Zolo representing the ODM party.
We need to ask for IEBC to be reconstituted yesterday. That is the only way that we can be able to recall some of the MPs who supported the finance bill, yet the voters told them not to do that.
The process of recruiting IEBC commissioners will start after the IEBC selection panel is in place. The IEBC has been without commissioners since March 2023, when Irene Masit, who was the last commissioner, was forced out. The rest of the commissioners' terms had ended, with others forced to resign. Emmanuel Toh, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
The absence of a fully functional Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission has crippled key constitutional duties, including the crucial delimitation of boundaries set for 2024 and by-elections in 3 constituencies and 11 wards. Residents of the affected units are a disgruntled lot. They express dissatisfaction with the delay amid lagging development projects. Former Central Nyanza IEBC coordinator George Oyugi has lifted the lid on why the delay in appointing new commissioners is so damaging. Melita Oletenges has more.
As debate rages on why the process of appointing new commissioners and constituting the IEBC is dragging, pertinent questions on what the country is losing in the absence of the commission continue to crop up. Former IEBC coordinator Central Nyanza Region George Oyugi says the delays are suspect.
we don't know whether it is deliberated by the executive to delay the appointment of commissioners so that they do things rush minute. We don't need those rush hours because we have enough time to choose commissioners on time.
A key function of the IEBC is the delimitation of boundaries. It was supposed to have happened in 2024, but the delay in the appointment of commissioners has hindered the process.
Boundary delimitation is a process because it means engaging stakeholders. It also includes getting the data, and then it also involves public hearings. Then finally, it's supposed to be approved by the parliament and then be gazetted. When all these things are not done on time, that means the IEBC is going to be overstretched.
Banisa, Ugunja and Magarini constituencies, which have been left vacant, lack representation in parliament, with locals reporting stalled development projects.
We don't have MP, na tunataka kwamba serikali angalie sisi MP yetu kwamba we have a problem.
11 wards in the country are also vacant, including Nyamaya and Nyansiongo wards in Nyamira County. Locals are outraged by the lack of representation.
Constitutionally, we have got a right to representation. Because we have got a right to representation and we are not enjoying that, we feel strongly disadvantaged in terms of our constitutional rights.
Maendeleo imerudi nyuma na tungeomba kama serikali itujali sana kwa sababu sasa hatuna mambo kama bursaries, hatujaona mambo ya maendeleo ya agriculture, hatujaona.
And when we do not have elections taking place, it means that our rights are actually being denied. We do not know whom to appeal to.
Former insiders say the delay is more political than it appears.
That is interest. People want to take care of their interest. We have got political parties, we have got leaders who want to take care of their interest. And that's why some of them are delaying the formation of IEBC, so that they take it last minute and last minute rush like the Cherera 4.
The void in the commission is as a result of the resignation of the Cherera 4 and the end of the tenure of other commissioners, including former chairperson Wafula Chebukati. Melita Oletenges, Citizen TV.
3 miners lost their lives in an overnight fire in Kapsogut, Kericho County. The children, aged between 12 and 6, died after their house caught fire last evening, burning them to death. The fire incident has left an entire village in mourning and parents of the deceased devastated.
A woman weighed down by pain that's indescribable. When she left her home to attend a celebration last evening, she was the mother of 7 children. Now, nearly half her family has been wiped out in an evening blaze. Sandra, 12, Enoch, 8, and Abigail, 6. She returns to the charred remains of her house, her belongings, and the demise of her 3 children. Her husband, Leonard Keegan, cannot fathom the tragedy that has befallen his family, and neither can the community here.
Others were playing and all of a sudden they slept. So they were giving the company the disabled one. That is the reason these old children was inside looking for the disabled one.
The source of the fire that rendered this family desolate remains unknown, but neighbors say there were unusual sounds that preceded the inferno.
Kuna sauti ilisikika tu ambayo jirani alisema alisikia sauti kwa hiyo ikitoka kwa hiyo nyumba, alafu kidogo akaona nyumba inachomeka.
The children had locked themselves inside the house as their father was at work while their mother attended a graduation ceremony for newly circumcised boys in the neighborhood. The eldest of the deceased children, Sandra, was disabled and couldn't move fast enough to save herself and her younger siblings. The frame of her wheelchair, now destroyed in the fire, is evidence of the severity of the flames that consumed the little ones' bodies and everything that constituted their family's earthly belongings. The surviving family members now seeking help to bury their loved ones and to rebuild their lives amidst the pain of their sudden and devastating loss.
Fazi yao yote ilichomeka. So sasa tunaomba viongozi wetu watusaidie kabisa, tusaidie hii jamii.
The Kericho County government has promised to support this family in this difficult time. Officers from the DCI department have begun investigations to determine what exactly caused the fire, but the remains of the children are kept in a nearby mortuary awaiting an autopsy. Brenda Wanga, Citizen TV.
Now to a story that will inform our discussion this evening. President William Ruto continues to drum up support for Raila Odinga's African Union Commission chairmanship bid, saying he has asked the East African Community member states to rally behind the opposition leader. President Ruto says Odinga, who has a proven track record and is a renowned Pan-Africanist, is best placed to advise the regional integration of the continent in trade, investment and other diplomatic circles. As you'll hear now from Francis Mtalaki, Odinga is in Eritrea on his continent-wide campaign with focus on countries that lie in northern Africa.
Speaking during the official launch of the 14th edition of ESC Interparliamentary Games in Mombasa County, President William Ruto sustained his push for support for Raila Odinga's African Union Commission chairperson bid. Ruto asking member states to unite behind Odinga.
I ask you as East Africans that we stand united behind the candidature of our former Prime Minister, the Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, so that he can provide the leadership of this continent that is so much desirous to take our continent to the next level.
President Ruto indicating that Odinga, a renowned Pan-Africanist, was best placed to advance the regional integration of the continent in trade and other diplomatic matters.
This time round, it is the opportunity for East Africa to produce the chair of the Africa Union. And in our midst, we have a solid candidate, a man with tremendous experience, a Pan-Africanist who can take this continent to the next level.
Odinga is currently in Eritrea on his continent-wide campaign with focus on countries that lie in Northern Africa. He is banking on his political credential to outweigh other candidates. The president saying Odinga will take the continent to the next level and transform the East African community into an economic powerhouse.
Integration of Africa will be led by the integration of East Africa. East Africa today is the most progressive economic community in Africa. Our intra-trade is all the way to 28%. And therefore, if Africa is going to be united, if Africa is going to play its rightful place, the engine will be in East Africa.
During the event, key speakers rooted for deeper integration of the EAC that so far has 8 members, with the latest entrant being Somalia. Francis Mtalaki, Citizen TV, Mombasa.
An ancestral community graveyard in Marsabit is on the verge of being grabbed for private use by individuals the community there says are well known to the authorities. The community cemetery that has for decades been set aside for public utility by the Pentecostal denomination and also hosts a World War I cemetery. Citizen TV's O'Day Francis was in Marsabit visiting the close to 2 hectares of cemetery land whose alleged grabbing is dragging in, among others, the National Lands Commission.
Marsabit town is home to the Commonwealth War Graves, a small but historically significant cemetery that is part of the Protestant Christian cemetery. This site borders both Catholic and Muslim cemeteries and houses a war cemetery for soldiers who fell during the Second World War. This revered ground holds the grave of Daudi Danabo Jibo, the first Christian convert to be buried here in 1939. Recent developments have raised serious concerns about the management and protection of this historically significant land as private developments encroach upon the cemetery.
On my right is Marsabit War Cemetery. 25 East African military men were buried here between 1939 and 1945. But behind me is a developer within the same cemetery that was given to Protestants, claiming to have a title deed that this land or this plot belongs to him.
An aerial view of the cemetery reveals evidence of encroachment. Permanent structures including a church, garage, lodgings, and a bar have been erected right in the heart of the cemetery. Fences have been put up, marking the boundaries of the grabbed land. But the Christian community led by the Marsabit Pastor Fellowship in Marsabit is pushing back against the alleged grabbing. We spoke to Solomon Galgalo Daudi, whose father was the first person to be buried here in 1939.
Tupewe sehemu yetu kwa ukamilifu ili we should give them the respect ya wale waliotutangulia.
Just like Solomon, Jacob Oche's father was among the first evangelists in Marsabit as well and was buried here in 1975.
We can see that there's a grabbing of land. All around there's a building. On top of that there's a bar, there's a lodging. Every other place is being occupied unnecessary. And we are very sad about this issue. We like the government to come in and settle this thing once and for all. And this is a graveyard. And this is where my father was buried. He was buried here in 1975. And he was one of the first priests, ACK preach, who was ordained 1956. And he was buried here in 1975. But the problem of this place was grabbing. And the grabbing started very slowly, like a kibanda. After kibanda, there's a house coming up. But the government never issued any title deed to this land.
Jacob Elisha Godana, the area member of County Assembly for Marsabit Central, is also affected. His 7 family members have been buried here.
Today, somebody has grabbed this land and he has a title deed of the year 1989. And the first person was buried here in 1940. And he has a title deed of 1989 and the year 2000. So we wonder, how comes you build a church, you build a restaurant, a lodging, and a bar, and you dig a toilet on a graveyard? So we are wondering, we want to ask the government, which criteria did you use? And you know very well that there is a Marsabit War Cemetery here. According to the information from NLC and the Ministry of Lands, Nairobi, the title deed of war grave is ready. But funny enough, we are getting from the same office that there is somebody who is now claiming to the ownership of the same land. So who is issuing the title deed?
Reverend Joseph Jiwe of Marsabit Pentecostal Church adds his voice to the outcry.
Kotini iliamua 2017 iseme hiyo title deed zote ziwe revoked na si tupatiwe title deed ingine. Kwa hivyo kutoka 2017 mpaka 2024 hakuna title deed wametupatia.
In a report dated January 14, 2016, Marsabit's Chief Executive for Energy, Lands and Urban Development, Yassin Abubakar, addressed the contentious land issue. The report revealed that a 1992 survey by David Mwangi Madai identified the graveyard land based on a part development plan, PDP, allocated as follows. Gilabaji and Hussein Tari under LR number 11969/211, Protestant graveyard under LR number 11969/212. Adan Jilohuka under LR number 11969/213. Subsequent investigations by the Land Commission recommended the revocation of the said part development plan used to initiate these surveys and all associated title deeds. The findings concluded that the war cemetery is linked to the Protestant graveyard, designated as a public utility, a matter that escalated to the Environment and Land Court at Meru in 31st August 2017 and concluded on 3rd June 2019 under Environment Judge E.C. Cherono. We sought answers from the county government of Marsabit, and Marsabit's county's Minister for Lands, Amina Chala, confirmed that the cemetery is indeed public utility.
Where the graveyard is in public land, and it cannot be given to any other person, but it only serves the purpose of public, and specifically Christian graveyard. Developers should find their own private land. They cannot do their whatever buildings on public land.
The war cemetery is one of our richest historical sites. So if it is true, as reported, that somebody has encroached, for sure, we will take all the necessary action, evict those individuals, and in fact, fence the place off.
We reached out to the National Lands Commission, where its chairman, Geshom Otachi, stated the position of the NLC of the Marsabit cemetery saga.
You see, this was land that was reserved for a cemetery, not necessarily titled to the Pastors Fellowship. So what is important is to ensure that those titles are cancelled from the register and there are no titles on it. Then what would happen is the county government can ask us under Section 15 of the Land Act to have it formally reserved and gazetted as such.
Now, with the growing appetite of land grabbing, even cemeteries like these ones have been grabbed. The question remains, is National Land Commission really dealing with land injustices in Kenya? Ode Francis, Citizen TV, Marsabit.
Watamu residents in Kilifi County have raised concern over a rise in insecurity and are calling upon the government to enhance security during this festive season. This follows an incident on Friday morning where visitors were allegedly harassed. The residents claim that security personnel have been neglecting their duties, leading to an increase in harassment of both locals and visitors.
Tukaenda mastarehe zetu humu Watamu na tukafanya mastarehe wakati wa Disemba, si ni mastarehe. Kurudi kwetu mmoja wetu akakalia pikipiki. Hatujui kwamba vile kulikuwa vile uko ndani huku watu wao wanafanya kazi kivyao. Tulipofika kwa gate ya hoteli yetu, ndio hawa polisi wakatuakosa, wakasema tusiingie. Na kutoka hapo ikazidi kuwa mbaya.
Na sana sana katika upande wetu wa usalama, tumeona usalama unatakana uimarike kulingana na hii hali ambayo wageni wanazidi kuongezeka huku Watamu.
Askari anaangalia kila mtu. Kila mtu anaangalia kila mahali pale, unaangalia kama askari, wageni, unaangalia wenyeji wa hapa, wasiokuwa wenyeji wa hapa, wote wanakuwa. Lakini sasa wewe kama uliajiriwa uangalie watu wa Mangweni peke yake, basi ina haja waandikwe tu waende Mangweni.
And with that report, we take a break on Citizen Weekend. But as promised, on the other side, we have that conversation on the East Africa community at 25. With me on set, I have the man who oversaw the operations of the Secretariat from 1996 all the way to 2001. And remember, the treaty was ratified in 1999. So we get his take, as well as that of the serving Secretary General, and that is Veronica Nduva, who joins us remotely from Mombasa, where the Interparliamentary Games are underway. So stay tuned. Citizen Weekend has much more in store. Relations. We discuss the East Africa Community Bloc, the opportunities, challenges, and prospects.
As a parent, you want your little one to experience all that life offers. To touch the world with an open heart and curious mind. But the world, for all its beauty, holds unseen dangers. Germs, bacteria, tiny threats, waiting on every surface. Dettrex protects you and your family from disease-causing germs. That's why I choose Dettrex. Allowing the freedom to be yourself all day long.
Dettrex, endorsed by Kenya Progressive Nurse Association. Bidhaa bora kutoka Pwani Oil Limited.
These days, you have to shop smart as everything is so expensive. I shop smart. I always get a good bargain when I buy my mbogas from Mama Chege. I shop smart. I buy the 1 kg of Msafi, which costs the same as 500 grams of a popular detergent. I shop smart. Msafi removes tap stains and keeps clothes bright. And its pleasant fragrance keeps clothes smelling fresh. Chagua smart, value maradufu, na Msafi.
Great yummy taste, gotta hack it. I spread bread, pate nguvu, gotta pack it. Napaka nywele design ya mogoro. Blue Band, Juni natural cocoa. 5 vitamins, una grow plus ni tam na ni Tuna hack snack na ki Blue Band choco for your growth.
Jitokeze na Kiwi. Buy a Kiwi limited edition tin and stand a chance to win your share of 3 million in cash, school fees, shopping vouchers, and other amazing prizes. Simply dial *459 *5#. Enter the code under the lead and stand a chance to win. Step up and shine.
Explore Vietnam's beauty with View Travel. Enjoy the Hanoi City Tour, an overnight cruise in Ha Long Bay, thrill at Ba Na Hills, and tour Ho Chi Minh City, and so much more activities. Our 9-day adventure of Vietnam starts from $2,445 USD per person sharing. Angukia deals moto na View Travel. Book your dream Vietnam holiday and lipa pole pole. Visit viewtravel.com or call and WhatsApp 0703 254 254. View Travel. Dream, explore, discover.
New Downy refill pouches, lasting longer than expensive perfumes. Cut, store, and no need to add water. Serve with a Downy refill.
This is me at Stanbic Private Banking. What does it feel like? It's making power moves. It's living a little. It's more than banking. It's investing skillfully. It's planning wisely. It's living joyfully. It's banking easily. It's me walking boldly into my future. Start your journey. Visit www.stanbic.co.ke. Stanbic Bank is regulated by the Central Bank of Kenya.
When you've gotta go, go for Neptune, the softer 2-ply tissue paper, available in plain white and colored.
People come to me and they say they get discomfort when they have ice cream. Can you imagine that? Avoiding having cold ice cream. Sensodyne gives you long-lasting protections against sensitivity. And people come in and they're like, oh, it works. I can have ice cream and I'm not in any discomfort. I recommend Sensodyne because it works. It's brilliant.
your skin naturally connects with nature and recognizes the goodness of native ingredients, which is why AfriSense Toning Bathing Bar is packed with African ingredients. AfriSense, discover the secrets of African beauty for your skin.
As promised, we are joined now by Ambassador Dr. Francis Muthaura, not a stranger to those who are students of history, but he's here more pertinently on account of the fact that he served as the Secretary General of the East African Community between 1996 and 2001, during which period was the revival of the East African Community. We'll also be joined by the Secretary General of the East African Community, and that is Veronica Nduva, who's joining us remotely from Mombasa. But perhaps, Ambassador, you can set the historical context. What drove the revival of the East African Community after the initial faulting start, 1967 to 1977? Why revive it in 1999?
Thank you very much for inviting me. I think the East African Community is really very special for the people of this region. Because it opens the market, it opens also free flow of goods, services, and even investments. So it also keeps peace to the region. Because once the countries are working together, then there are no issues of possibilities of war. Now, the community, the first community, was started or was launched in 1967. But before even that community, there used to be East African High Commission for the three countries, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, under the British governance, because there was still a lot of relationship among the countries in the region, because they were under the same colonial government, and a lot of systems were interlinked. So when the three countries became independent, of course they reviewed that cooperation, and they found that they needed to start a new East African Community. That is in 1967. And that community was very advanced because the common service, the major common services, that is the railway, East African Railways, East African Post and Telecommunications. There was even East African Customs, East African Ports and Harbors, East African even income tax, which was East African. So it was actually like a federal. We are so much interwoven, almost like a federal government, but although it was not. So that cooperation was very intense. But when the three countries became independent, I mean, as we moved on, there was a feeling that Kenya was gaining more than the other two countries. So there was a bit of that. Then at the same time, the three countries adopted different post-independent strategies. Kenya was more capitalistic. It was more market-oriented in its policies. Tanzania became socialist, and Uganda was in between, especially under the Idi Amin. The policy was a bit confused. Ugandan policy was a bit confused, although Milton Obote, and also started Common Man's Charter, which became the Ugandan policy, which was more socialist, more nearer to the Tanzanian approach. So with that divergency, the community could not really work very well. And the tensions kept on building up until around 1977, when, because Tanzania was celebrating, and a very big occasion for like marketing its socialist policies to the world. Invited a lot of guests from all over the world. And they were using East African Airways. East African Airways belong to the three countries also. Then what happened is that at the same time, Kenya was complaining that the other member states were not servicing the loans taken by the East African Airways. So the National Bank of Kenya grounded the Kenya Airways because the other countries were not servicing the loans. But it coincided with that Tanzanian big occasion, and that, trying to market their socialist policies. So the delegates, guests who were going to Tanzania, got stranded, and they thought Kenya was sabotaging that occasion. So they closed the border. The border, Tanzanian border, got closed immediately. And with the closure of the border, then the East African community could not function. So it went down.
Okay.
And at the same time, Nyerere, after Idi Amin took power, Nyerere was very much opposed to military leadership. They said he cannot sit together in the summit with Idi Amin. So still the summit was not meeting. So the community was really at a very low.
And I think the last time they met at that point was 1971.
Yes.
But because you introduced the subject of a summit, we have Veronica Nduva, who is the Secretary General, East African Community, joining us from Mombasa. You presided over your first summit in this last week as Secretary General. I saw you presiding over a panel discussion of the heads of state. What stuck with you in terms of the 25 years that the East African Community has been in existence following its re-establishment in 1999?
Thank you very much, Olive Barrows, and a very good evening to Francis Mudhaura, who is Secretary General Emeritus, the founding Secretary General of the revamped ESC 1997 to date, 1999 to date. And the very fact that we have Ambassador Mudhaura with us today is a momentous thing that demonstrates that the community has come from far. I like the background that he has started by saying that we started first up to 1977 and that did not work. But the focus should be on the fact that we decided to start again, because that means there was that political will to make it happen. So yes, for me, presiding over the summit on Saturday as Secretary General and having all those heads of state there reassured me of the commitment that we have for this community. More importantly, having almost 4 former Secretary Generals in attendance really spoke to the life of the ESC, the continuity, the commitment, and the future that is there. So for me, the 25 years, Olive, what it means is that we've made progress. When Ambassador Mudhaura restarted the community, they were part of the group that came up with a treaty where they identified the 4 pillars: customs union, a common market, monetary union, political federation, and we have continued to make strides on each of these markers, Olive, and that is what we celebrated. That is what the 25 years meant to us, that look how far we've come. We've had challenges, we've had achievements, there are opportunities, there are aspirations, but most importantly, we have the political will and commitment. Thank you.
All right. Ambassador, she mentions political will. What did it take to revive the community in 1999?
Well, I really wish to, first of all, to congratulate Veronica for what she's doing. And, I was in Arusha 2 days ago to participate in the celebrations, and I really was very impressed by the arrangements that she had made and the ways the whole program went. And the community felt re-energized, and that's the way we should go. what I can say about the community, why the community? Why do you think we need that community? I think it's very important. Community gives us a broader market. It gives us a wide area, economic area, investment area. It also gives us what one may call peace, because peace is very important. If neighboring countries are meeting in the summit regularly, they are meeting at the ministerial level, they are meeting at officials level, and there are mechanisms for resolving any problem that arises within the community. That's a guarantee that we can't go wrong. And so far, since this community, the current community was started, I think we have only seen expansion, more economic activities, and the East Africa actually have grown or have developed more than the other regions of Africa. And among all the other economic communities or regional communities in Africa, East Africa is the best performing. Why? I think the treaty was very well thought. It was a very good treaty. It's very, very accommodating, and focuses on putting the countries together, making them friends, and opening the market and also the investment area, interlinking the infrastructure, and really the community. There is no alternative to the community. If I can give you take you back a bit in history, when we started the current community, do you know Kenya's biggest trading partner was in East Africa?
No.
It was Rwanda, with about 100 million shillings. Very little trade. There was no trade. Kenyan border with Tanzania was closed for 20 years after the collapse of the previous community. So we are doing no trade. Uganda and Amin, we and our army and the Ugandan army on our border facing each other, because there was a lot of tents. Amin tried to expand his territory, so we had to keep him off. They even fought a bloody war with Tanzania. So that is the type of situation we were after the collapse of the previous community. But now, what is happening is that we are brothers and sisters, and we are expanding that brotherhood and sisterhood. Okay. So it's wonderful.
Madam SG, speaking of brotherhood and sisterhood, how important is peace and stability in the region to the realization of the 4 pillars you spoke about of the East African community? We had President William Ruto, who now chairs the community, speak on the situation in the DRC, speak on the situation in South Sudan, speak on the Somalia situation. How critical is peace and stability to the realization of the pillars?
Thank you, Olive. Very critical. Peace and security is very critical in the region because it is the impetus for which any growth can take place. Remember, we are all about movement of people, movement of goods, movement of services. For that to happen, there has to be a conducive environment. There has to be peace within our borders, within our countries, within our collective partner states. The absence of peace will then mean that we do not integrate as we have aspired, because there will be limited movement. And yes, you're very right that His Excellency the President of the Republic of Kenya, Dr. William Ruto, who was elected as chair of the EAC Heads of Summit, emphasize the point on peace and security. We have within our establishment the protocol on peace and security, which looks at cooperation, regional cooperation, to ensure that we are having dialogues, we are integrated, we are talking to each other where there is a problem. We have our forces that are undertake a joint preparation exercises. As you may recall, the EAC deployed a joint regional force to the eastern DRC, and that process went up to 2023. There has been a political track where we've been having joint sessions, and just recently with the concluded summit, the heads of state reiterated their commitment in that now there should be collaborative efforts towards peace and security in the region, where other regional bodies such as the SADC, that is the one that is in the south, and the EAC should undertake a joint, should find joint modalities of addressing issues around regional peace and security, especially within the DRC. So I think I'd like to say that it is very important that we prioritize how our partner states are, whether with each other or whether within themselves. I want to give an example. For instance, where there is a conflict and then there are refugees, those refugees will naturally spill over to partner states. And we know a number of our partner states are host to a number of refugees. So all these point to a need of ensuring that constant efforts are being made to ensure that there is peace and security prevailing within the region. Of course, through joint efforts, through mediation, through continuous dialogue, through that outreach, and the brotherhood that you have mentioned, that by sticking together and talking through our problems and our issues, then we find common solutions, because we are united, we are really one people as Jumuiya. So I wish to say that peace and security remains critical. It is espoused in our protocol on peace and security. Our discussions, our priorities, right now we have the East African Community 6th Development Strategy. One of the priority areas is peace and security. As we are developing our next seventh development strategy, peace and security remains a critical item. Our leaders talk about it all the time. It's an aspiration, it is a reality, it's always a work in progress, and we continue to always ensure that it remains at the heart of our integration agenda.
All right, just quickly, final remarks. Yes, Ambassador?
Yeah, I would like to say something about peace and security, because, you know, when the community was started, we are just 3 countries, so the issue of peace and security was much easier. But now the community has expanded to include countries like Congo, DRC, and Somalia. And you know, these countries have been having really internal problems for a long time. If by joining the community, these countries can stabilize, that would be one of the best achievements of the community, because it would mean expanding our, economic cooperation with those countries. And now the population of East Africa is more than 300 million, and that's not small. So if East Africa, and I'm sure they can, make a major contribution to stabilization of Somalia, permanent stabilization, and also democratization, because a country cannot be stable unless it is a democracy. So if East Africa can, and it should be able to stabilize DRC and Somalia, I think that would be one of the best achievements in the African continent.
All right. I'd like to thank the Secretary General, Veronica Nduva, East African Community. I will find another opportunity for us to get into the non-tariff barriers, such as opening the airspace that was addressed during the summit. I'd also like to thank you, Ambassador Dr. Francis Muthaura, for contributing to the discussion this evening. There's a lot to get into. 25 years is a long time, but thank you for participating tonight, and thank you for the book, A Moving Horizon, penned a memoir, Francis Muthaura. So we take a break, but on the other side, Citizen Weekend continues.